Hello, I'm Dondi Plowman, Chancellor here at UT Knoxville. Congratulations on the 10th anniversary of UT Social Media Week. What started with an idea and funding in 2012 from two alumni, Adam Brown and Ed Patterson, has evolved into an annual event that continues to grow each year. Social media is a powerful tool and one that provides direct access to your community. Over the past year, I have especially found social media a useful way to connect with our students, faculty and staff, and alumni when we can't be together in person. But social media also comes with great responsibility. As easy as it is to share information and ideas, it's also a swift way to garner negative attention and thoughts around a subject. As you continue to expand your knowledge utilizing social media, I encourage you to find ways to be a bright light in a space that can at times be challenging. Have a great week learning and connecting with others, and congratulations on 10 years of education, collaboration, and growth in the social media realm. Thank you, and go Vols.
Well, thank you, Chancellor, for that great introduction. And I want to thank all of our attendees. Got a nice showing here, and especially our esteemed panel. I'm really excited for this discussion. I think it's a very important discussion to have, and we're just really thrilled that all of you could make it today. So I'm going to introduce our moderator, and then he'll introduce our amazing panel. So Dr. Guy Harrison is our moderator, and he's in his first year as assistant professor at UT School of Journalism and Electronic Media. His research focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion in sports media. And Dr. Harrison's first scholarly book, On the Sidelines, Gender Neoliberalism and the American Female Sportscaster, is due to be released later this year. So I'll hand over the floor to Dr. Harrison, and thank you all so much for being here.
Hey, thank you, Derek. It's not often that an academic who studies a profession is often given or is given the opportunity to chat with some of the most widely recognized, most inspirational figures in that profession. But that's exactly the position I find myself in this evening. On one hand, we know that when it comes to big ticket, high profile men's sports, there are more women breaking through sports communications glass barrier than ever before. And we know that social media are helping them do that. But on the other hand, we also know that social media and the industry as a whole can still be a hostile place for women to navigate. So to talk us through that reality this evening, we have three very distinguished guests, so distinguished that your moderator is kind of fanboying here quite a bit. So the first guest I'd like to introduce this evening is Jessica Mendoza. Jessica is an Olympic softball gold and silver medalist and is one of the leading voices in ESPN's Major League Baseball coverage. In 2015, she became the first female television analyst for a nationally televised Major League Baseball game. Since then, she has gone on to become the first female analyst for a nationally televised MLB postseason game and the first female TV analyst for the Men's College World Series. You can catch Jessica on TV every Sunday night this spring and summer as she continues her work in the booth for ESPN's Sunday Night Baseball. Thank you for joining us, Jess.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Also with us this evening is Beth Mowens. Beth has been a play-by-play announcer for nearly 30 years, calling a vast array of sports for both ESPN and CBS Sports. In 2017, she became the first female play-by-play announcer for a nationally televised NFL game when she called an opening week Monday Night Football game between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Denver Broncos. Since then, Beth has also called games for the NFL on CBS and is the preseason television voice of the Las Vegas Raiders. It was also recently announced that Beth will be calling select games this season for the Chicago Cubs. A native of Syracuse, New York, Beth has also called college football, basketball, volleyball, softball, and soccer for ESPN and is a 2009 Greater Syracuse Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame inductee. Thank you for joining us, Beth.
I need to stop working so hard. And coming from Syracuse, Knoxville, you know I can bring the orange with me. So there you go today.
There you go. Beth knows her audience. And our third guest this evening is familiar to us here on Rocky Top. Erin Exum is a 2010 graduate of UT's School of Journalism and Electronic Media. Erin spent 10 years working in media relations and public relations for various NFL franchises, spending nearly 7 of those years with the then Oakland Raiders as their media relations coordinator and eventually manager. Now, Erin is holding the position of Director of Communications for Vroom after previously holding a position with StubHub as its U.S. Communications Manager. Thank you for joining us, Erin.
Thanks for having me. Go Vols.
All right, so my first question that I would like each of our 3 esteemed panelists to answer: how have you, or how did you, use social media or leverage social media in your sports communication career?
I mean, I think, sorry, go ahead, Beth.
No, you got it, Jess.
No, I mean, I feel like, I mean, coming from, especially like near the end of my athlete career, I found that it was the first time, especially because there just wasn't a whole lot of media coverage for female athletes, that I could put my voice out there, creating a brand and not having to hide behind a sponsor or, you know, the rare television coverage you might have to be the only thing that really created who you were and said who you were. So, I mean, I used it early on back, like, I remember it was Twitter. I don't really count Facebook because that was more like family stuff, but Twitter, I could really just, if I had an opinion or if there's something I was passionate about, a link to an article I was really interested in. And I really loved, back when I was an athlete, the exchange that I could have with complete strangers. Like, loved it, you know, just, hey, I saw you play or whatever. And it was amazing. And it felt very safe early on because you're in a place, it's not some stranger walking up to you and you're kind of like, okay, don't really know you. You know, it was a safe place to do all of that. So once it switched to broadcasting, I just found, again, it was a place that I could really be me and not have to play a certain role that might be what I have to do in work.
I think for me, first and foremost, it was the shared experience. And even if it was, you know, a smaller subset of, say, Tennessee fans, you may not have been at the game or you may not have been with other Tennessee fans wherever you were, but you could share that experience online with a lot of people that were feeling the same things you were. And I think, you know, when we're covering softball games or when I was calling Raiders preseason, you could find this group of people that wanted to share these experiences with you. And I really, from day one, tried to find the positive spaces, and that was one of them. The second thing I think that has ended up being of critical importance is its usefulness as a research tool, and particularly Twitter. So what I find is now a lot of the people that I follow are local beat reporters for a team, national reporters for Major League Baseball, your whatever team you happen to be following, those writers are all on Twitter. And it's a great way to use as a research tool. We even have, like, so when I'm calling football games, we have a spotter up in the booth, you know, and that's a guy that, you know, helps me figure out who made a tackle or what wide receivers are running on and off the field. And so what we do is before the game, he sets it up on Twitter. So he's following all the local reporters and some of our national reporters. And during timeouts, he will hop on Twitter to see if there is anything that we might be missing. And of course, he can also sort of filter out a lot of the negative stuff that's out there to find if there's anything useful or anybody that we need to call or get a reaction to, or, you know, somebody may have gotten hurt and we didn't see them limp off to the side. And so we can have our reporter on site check with that. So I've really started to enjoy the usefulness of it as a research tool.
Yeah, and I think I have these like badass on camera women with you and with me on this panel, and I can kind of speak from behind the scenes, which I think is an added layer because unlike Jessica, no one cares about what I have to say on my Twitter, but the people that I represent they do care about what they say. So I think like the great part about sports is like it kind of requires you to be active and up to speed on social media at all times. So like when I was at the Raiders, I had TweetDeck open on my computer at all times. And like Beth's point, one of my columns was for all the local beat writers, because sometimes they get stuff first. Then I had a column for the players to make sure they weren't saying something stupid. And then another column about, you know, following all the other NFL teams. Because I think the worst thing, especially from a PR perspective, is being the last to know something, right? So like Tiger Woods got in an accident today, and I bet everyone on this call, because we're also up on social media, knew instantaneously. And that's kind of the benefit of social media is knowing. And it's kind of, you know, you can use it as sort of a copycat tool. You know, if we saw that the Chargers were doing something innovative, it's like, oh, we got to get on that because we want to enter that conversation and be relevant amongst sports fans, you know, whatever. And I think like, though now I am working at an e-commerce company, a big part of why Vroom hired me is because of my background in sports. And Vroom just had our first Super Bowl ad, and literally the first 3 months of my job was fully dedicated to getting PR around our Super Bowl ad. So I felt like kind of related to sports, but I was monitoring social media at all times because our ad was a little controversial. So seeing like when we released it, what people are saying, you know, interacting with other brands leading up to the Super Bowl. So I think whether you're in sports or not, I think the way that, you know, 2020, 2021 headed is just all brands are on Twitter and all brands are on social media. So you have to understand what audience you're looking for and kind of copycat what you're seeing on social media.
Okay, thank you. Just for the audience in attendance, you can use the chat feature to ask questions, though we will save questions until the very end after our conversation. So, you know, shifting gears a little bit, because it sounds like you all have used social media quite differently in your careers, and that kind of shows the versatility of it. But as we know, social media, like sports communication itself, can be a hostile place for those who aren't heterosexual, cisgender men. So what needs to change, in your opinion, in order to make social media and or sports communication more welcoming?
I think that's $1 million question. I think social media platforms are kind of working to solve that. You've seen Instagram kind of tamper with the, you know, not showing how many likes people have or getting rid of comments. But I think all of us, especially the young people coming up and the young people that are demanding change and, you know, working at Twitter and working at Google, have to demand more, because I think obviously all of us are trying to consistently practice like that virtual anti-bullying and all of us like being kind, but it's like the big dogs like Twitter and Instagram that are really going to kind of help us impact change there. But what we can do, I think, is, you know, be inclusive of communities that are less represented on these platforms. And I think as a PR professional who, you know, regularly works with the media, the normalization of athletes paving the way for underrepresented communities is also important. So like, you know, removing that stigma and that shock of an athlete coming out or a female sideline reporter or a female referee, so that it's not newsworthy, I think can really help with the negative comments and kind of stigma that comes along with social media.
I think it's important for us, you know, with the changes that need to come from the top. I think it's important for us to do something that we did with the NFL a few years back, and they had a great marketing campaign called "Who's in Your Huddle?" And if you think about your space on social media as a huddle, it's really important to matter that only the guys or only the girls in your huddle are the ones that matter. Those are the voices that you need to listen to. Those are the people that actually care about you. Yeah, you'd love to please the 80,000 people in the stands. You hope they like what you do. I think we all have that feeling of wanting to be liked for what we do. But you have to remember that those opinions from the cheap seats don't necessarily matter. I like to say they come from the 4 I's: indifference, ignorance, immaturity, and insecurity. none of those things are good things to have in your life or to have in your huddle. Nothing about that says we. So I know I grew up in a different time when I wasn't on social media all the time, and it's a new world now, but as best we can, you have to try and put your blockers up to all the negativity and remember that those opinions don't matter. And you have to make sure you're surrounding yourself, even in your social media space, with people that actually do care about you. And I think there are a lot of women on social media that are great at fighting for themselves, fighting for their rights with their voices loud and proud, and are doing a great job, sort of beating down a lot of that negativity. For others of us, I have chosen more of a Switzerland path and listened to my best friend Mark Twain, who once told me, never argue with a fool. Onlookers might not be able to tell the difference. So, well, perhaps I read that somewhere, but you get the gist of it. So that's kind of my approach to a lot of the negativity. He also said, never try and teach a pig to sing. It's a waste of your time and it annoys the pig. So that's another good one. Right, Jess?
I was going to say, you and Mark go way back. I mean, BFFs,
way back.
Yeah.
Way back.
No, I feel like one of the hardest things is giving attention to it, which I battle at times because there is so many things out there. And I have to be honest, like I don't interact as much as I used to. That's why I said back when I was an athlete, it was a little different. Even people that were maybe mean or they weren't as harsh, but now it's a whole nother level. Being in a more male dominated space, people can get pretty wicked. But some of the stuff I'm like, okay, like I gotta just like quote this tweet and and I've done that maybe once or twice. And I never find that I mean, even though everyone comes at the guy, he like loves it. Like I feel, I don't know who this person, but they respond to like every, like, you're an idiot. Like, it's like, they're just looking for that attention. And so I know I can be guilty, and I have women that I know really well that get, and they'll quote tweet and comment. And I do think there is a group of people that do that for exactly that reason. They're coming at you, and I'll find I'm like, why do you follow me if you hate me so much? Mm-hmm. And it's because they want to hate you publicly. They want to come at you and get to you. So it is, I mean, Beth did say it perfectly. Like you want to have your huddle, but oh my gosh, is it hard to like when someone's out here yelling and saying things and you want to like, okay, like I'm coming at you, like here I come. And it is hard to ignore it. And that's what they're looking for.
I've typed out 1,000 tweets and just caught myself before I hit send. That's for sure, Jess. The other thing I like to think of is, yes, everybody does have a voice, but not everybody necessarily is supposed to have a microphone. And that's what social media is for a lot of these negative folks. That's their microphone. And if you give them your 30,000 or your 100,000 followers, then like Jess said, you're amplifying their voice for them, which, is something else to consider.
Well, we always knew Beth could turn a phrase, and she probably turned about 5 or 6 phrases.
Oh, I got more. Don't worry about that, Dr. Harrison.
That's Twain over there.
So as you all have established, I mean, we know that social media is a very wicked, can be a very wicked place, and difficult to navigate. And in many respects, it's best to block out the haters and the trolls. But as you all attested to when you answered the first question about how you use social media in your professional careers, social media is still a thing that young women, young users in particular, or especially, will have to navigate. So given everything that's out there, all the negativity, how would you suggest a young user, especially a young woman who's aspiring to get into a field and a career in sports communication, how do they go about using or navigating all the negativity and balancing that with how they can use it for positive?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I'll jump in and say the most important thing I think you can do, if you haven't already, is take a class in public speaking. and be very adept at communicating and be well read. Know a little bit about a lot. There's another one for you, Guy. Know a little bit about a lot, so you can have conversations with all kinds of different people. The other thing I think is critical is you have to be in a happy space in your own mind before you try and go out and encounter some of that negativity. So the other thing I like to say is gain some, grow some, and get some. If you're a young woman, especially, that may not be someone who likes to be at the head of the class or the first one in line, you got to gain some self-confidence. Unfortunately, the only way to do that is to fail, trial and error, and improve yourself and be willing to put yourself out there. You got to grow some thick skin. Because all of us in this space are going to get hit from all sides, and you're going to walk into a room where people are throwing haymakers at your head. You got to be ready to adjust and adapt, and then you got to get some experience, and get your voice out there, get your face out there, get your writing out there, and find out ways to connect with people and improve.
Beth.
Yeah.
God, I mean, I hope someone's writing down all of these.
Wow.
Okay. That's part of my self-scout, Erin. You got to look yourself in the mirror right there. I learned PowerPoint during the pandemic. You guys are in trouble today.
Yeah.
I was just going to add to, I don't have any catchphrases, but I think one of the most important aspects of navigating social media, and it's something that I have to work on myself, I'm super guilty of this, is limiting your time on it. And I'm sure all of us can relate to sometimes you catch yourself just scrolling and you don't even remember opening the app, and you don't even know why you came here and how long you've been here. And you're not even consciously thinking, like, you're not even reading anything. You're just mindlessly scrolling, and you think that it's boredom, but really it can affect your well-being, and it can affect your confidence and your overall like time management. Like, how many times have we been like, oh shit, like I've been on Instagram for an hour. Like it just is a time suck. And like, though it seems a little counterintuitive, there are apps that tell you when you've been on apps too long. And I've signed up for that because I get alerts when it's like, yo, you've been on Instagram for too long today. And it just kind of makes you realize you should put your phone down, because you have to really remind yourself that like the number of comments and the number of likes that you get on social media does not actually validate you as a person in the real world. And your self-worth should not be determined by social media as much as the world wants you to think that it does. So I think taking a step back, saying, okay, I've seen what people have to say to me today. And I mean, again, Jessica and Beth have to deal with this kind of stuff way more than I do, because I get 12 likes on my tweets, but like, you have to limit your time so that you remember what the real world is like.
No, and it's interesting because you do like, and Erin, that's such a great point, because I feel like it becomes where it's like, that is your feedback, like this is like, okay, I had a good post, I had a bad post, like this is how many likes. Oh, people came after me and hated me. Maybe that's what I wanted, so that's a good thing. I don't know, like it just, you rely on complete strangers to dictate. Like what I said, I originally got on social media to do was to let people know who I am and create my own brand. That's me, that's not connected with anybody else, but actually just me. And then here I am, and I have to realize like these complete strangers are somehow affecting the decisions that I'm making on who I am choosing to be and what I'm choosing to put out there. So my relationship with the negative has had to really change, because it affected me, Guy, in a huge way, where it got to the point where I just was hearing a lot of that negativity when I was on air. I would hear people saying, well, you didn't play Major League Baseball. Like, why? I could hear their voices. And when it affected me that way, I realized, okay, my relationship has got to change. And like, this isn't like a boyfriend or a husband, or like, these are strangers that I'm letting affect me. So once I got to that point, I still like read certain things, but as soon as I can feel it's a tone thing. And I know Erin, Beth, like you can just feel the tone of the comments just change, and everyone reacts. I just stop and I get off and I put it down and I walk away, because it sucks you in, especially the negative. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'll read through positive stuff. Like, yeah, the negative, it just sucks you in. Like, what do they hate? Why do they, oh man, that's so mean, instead of just being like, I don't need this in my life, and putting it down and walking away. Because if I don't put it down, I will like, oh, what else did they say? What did they say? What did they say to what they said to me?
Yeah. The other thing too, if you're in a performance space, I have found that it's always good to get some feedback or watch the film before you look at social media. And so by that, I mean, you'd be walking out of the press box after a game and you'd flip on Twitter and, you were calling the Florida game and people are all over you because you kept mentioning Florida State. And you're like, what did I do? What happened? And now you're paranoid. Now you're nervous. Okay, did I really screw this up? So over time, what I would do was I just would not look at social media until after I watched the game or after we got feedback as a group. So often we would start watching the tape on our way to the airport, sitting in the airport, sitting on a plane, so that we would really have a better understanding of how we felt we performed, how we felt each other performed. And then I know when I go on Twitter and people are yelling at me because I was calling Florida State, it's because we had an entire 10-minute conversation about Florida State's game that was going on at the same time. And so don't make their problems your problem, I guess is a big piece of how you handle it in the performance space. If you're getting into sportscasting, or if you're in marketing or in the media where your words or your face are out there.
So Jess kind of touched on this briefly, but you all have achieved first as women in your respective careers. In which ways has that been a blessing, and in which ways has that been a curse?
Ooh, you know what?
Hey, you go
ahead,
back.
Erin. Go ahead.
Okay. I am just going to start before Beth talks about being inducted into Hall of Fame and Jess gets out her medals, because I am like silly
Totally where I was
on this
headed.
panel. But I think a blessing really is moments like this. And I'm sure Beth and Jess feel the same way, but women in sports is like its own fraternity, sorority. Even though like I have never met Jess, I feel like we already connect before we get on this call. And Beth and I worked together for a long time, but like I said, I just moved to Nashville, and the first thing I did was like look up the Titans front office staff to see what women work there so that I could reach out to them and have a networking lunch or whatever, because there's just something about females in sports that you get along with them and you can understand each other's perspective. So I think that is great. And I love talking about my experiences. Derek has had me in his class before, and I love getting to talk to people. And I nerd out on looking at like resumes. Like so many people have sent me resumes to like help them achieve, greatness. And I love doing that. And I think a blessing that I didn't even realize was a blessing until much later is the toughness that I had to build in my career. And, I was the first female on the football side in the Raiders building, and I was the only female on the plane with the Raiders for many years until Beth got there and joined the party. And I felt like almost all the eyes were on me sometimes, almost like wanting me to fail, because some people were not real stoked about having a female on the plane. The Raiders are a very conservative organization. And so I think like that immense pressure made me tough and made me confident. I think it can affect people differently, but for me, it made me feel more confident because I knew that I was good at my job and I knew that I was going to show that I was. I think all of us probably have faced stereotyping, and I faced it a lot when I was with the Raiders. And I would say that it was a little bit of a curse because every single time we walked into a hotel after landing from a plane, there's always fans in the hotel waiting for the team to arrive. And we're all wearing suits and we all have our suitcases. And I kid you, there is not one exception to this, that when I walked through the lobby with the team, a fan or an hotel employee, whatever, would ask me if I was a cheerleader, which I found very strange because like, did they think the Raiders just brought one? Like it was just going to be me. Like I was the only girl. And like, it was just going to be me on the sideline. Like I felt it.
Good, Erin.
Yeah, like just the one with the, on the Denver sideline. So I thought it was a very strange thing that people asked, but either way, like that kind of stereotype, I always felt bad for the person that asked me that because my attitude shifted and I just I felt like I needed to stand up for all the women who are not cheerleaders in sports. I mean, the cheerleaders are their own kind of beast on the sideline themselves, but like, I let them know that women have other jobs in sports other than being the cheerleader. And I think the assumption and the tone with which people speak to you is a part of the curse until you can kind of move past it, I guess. It can fuel you, but you have to get used to it.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Jess.
No, you can, I just wanted to say good for you though for educating, because I feel like more oftentimes than not, you just ignore it, or not you, but like women, it's like we don't want to even give it attention, and we smile at, no, I'm not, I'm this, whatever, no worries, but for you to flip that switch like that, I know, like when you get someone's name wrong and like someone corrects you in a way that's like stern and like you never forget it.
Yeah.
Like you will never make that mistake again. And so I'm so glad that all of those people along the way, I hope, will never stereotype a woman again. So I'm glad that you like flipped it and got like sassy with them, because they're
trust me, I would stop, turn around, go back over there. The players always be like, oh, Erin's got another one. Like, because I just like, I can't do that.
It really does bring out your competitive fire. I will say that when you're, for years, you would be the only woman in there, and eyes are on you and you can feel them and you're like, okay, I'm going to knock this out of the park. The nice thing now, as Erin references, it really is a sisterhood. And I won't talk about my Hall of Fames today, but I will show you my Jessica Mendoza autographed jersey from working with her. In terms of positives and negatives of being a trailblazer, I honestly cannot think of any negatives, because quite frankly, we didn't wake up this morning to be mediocre, Derek, right? We woke up this morning to do something cool and something creative and get the best out of the day. And what else would I be rather doing? And I know Jessica's going to drop some Billie Jean King on you here in a second, about the privilege of being able to do something we love. But greatest phrase in English is why not? And we are lucky to be around people, a lot of times older white men, who say, why not hire her? She is actually the best person for the job. And that's way better than your head hitting the pillow at night uttering the phrase, I really wish I would have tried. I can't think of anything worse than that. So I'd rather try and call MLB or NFL and not be real great at it, but at least I took a chance and took the opportunity. And, I think it's important, to go back to Mark Twain. Courage is the resistance to fear, the mastery of fear, Mendoza, not the absence of fear. So we all get the little butterflies in our belly, but you got to corral those butterflies. You got to tame them, and you got to turn them into positive energy, and put your Billie Jean King on, because pressure is
a privilege.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that, yes. And I think you both said it perfectly. I feel like, and my reaction to the question was like, it's never a curse. And sometimes I even hate the word blessing, because I'm like, people are always like, congrats, you're the first female. And I'm like, I didn't do anything yet. Like, congratulate me if I have a kick-ass broadcast, or, doing the World Series, or, and we as a team did something. But there are times when people will literally be like, congrats on being a woman. And I'm like, in this meal. And I get it, because there aren't very many. And so there is this feeling of like, congrats on making it to this point. But as an athlete, I'm like, it's like, congrats for being up to bat right now. And it's like, we still got the game. Like I gotta actually crush the ball right now. And I would say the only curse or the negative that it has come up more recently in the world of baseball with a lot of the sexual harassment stuff is, it sucks not like all my friends growing up were guys. Like there is still this mentality with me, like I'm just one of the guys. I'm sure Erin, Beth, like your personalities too. It's like, you just want to be able to hang, in my job, be able to talk shop, be able to like get information, talk hitting. And 99% of the time, that's exactly what, is read on the other side. But being a female And just really like having hair or maybe lipstick or God knows what it could be can trigger in men that you work with just this, like they're not listening. They see you only as like a piece of meat. And it's rare, but it's frustrating because there are times when you want to do your job. And if I was a dude and all the guys that I work with were on the same level, they can walk into a clubhouse and guys are changing and doing their thing and they can go and make the rounds. And I have to be careful. Like I can't go to the dinners. I can't, a lot of times I don't get guys' numbers. Like, and that's now in COVID, that's everything. You have to be able to have access to players that you can't go down on the field and talk to them anymore. But I can't just go, hey, like, can I get your number? I want to follow up. You were talking about that book club. I want to talk to you more. Guys, sometimes they hear, she wants to go out with me. She asked for my number. She likes me. That's all they hear out of your mouth. So that's the only, I guess, curse of being a female is that it is sometimes men think of you only as a woman that wants to be with them. And that is frustrating when you're a professional and you just want to do your job.
Piggybacking off of that, as that, brings up one of the questions that I wanted to ask, how do we as educators of sports journalists, how do we as an industry of sports media, how do we change that mindset of viewing women as just women as opposed to, people who are there to do a job?
Listen to women. I called Rob Manfred right after a lot of the allegations came out on Jared Porter with the Mets because I was really upset and I just wanted to go to the top and be like, we need to change. And, being a part of an organization in my career in the front office, so seeing kind of how sexual harassment, for example, is the proactive part of this. So when you're talking about educating, a lot of times it's a video. And everyone, I think we've all been through training. I mean, even at ESPN, we have our sexual harassment training. It's this video that like you can just fast forward through, it's not something that is meaningful that's going to grab people's attention. And in my opinion, my suggestion was have a woman confront an entire, and not just the players, but the managers, the front office, freaking CEO and owner, bring them in too, because everyone is equal as far as I'm concerned when it comes to that. And hear from a woman, like what it feels like to walk into a clubhouse when guys are changing, what it feels like to have a guy just make a quick comment. They think it's funny. Just to make it real. That doesn't mean that everyone's going to be perfect, but it definitely eliminates this just being one more meeting and one more video that we're just going to tune out, get on our phones on, and not even pay attention. And when it comes to sexual harassment, I know I'm obviously very biased with this, but we need to be better. We need to be different on the front end and not just react and freak out like, oh, what a jerk, fire his butt. Like, yeah, he's it's like, yeah, of course, now that the pictures are out there, but what did we do ahead of time? I mean, not one woman was even interviewed in that entire process. Like that should be mandatory. Interview, talk to the women that he worked with. So those are the things that I feel like as educators, when you're talking, get more women to talk about in front of a class, the real stuff, like what it feels like to be covering a men's sport.
I think the other thing is, and something that we've all learned growing up playing sports and being on teams and being in locker rooms and being around it, covering teams, is there's no greater pressure than peer pressure. And as much as women can speak out, as much as women can fight for their rights and to have these types of conversations, ultimately, a lot of it will fall on the guys in the locker rooms to apply peer pressure to the other guys in that locker room that aren't acting appropriately. And that's a very difficult thing to do. We've seen that over the years with, sexual assault cases, Ray Rice, unfortunately the list goes on and on. And it will take a lot of peer pressure from the leaders on those teams to say, hey, this is the standard here. These types of behavior are not going to be allowed, and we don't want these kinds of guys on our team. And it goes all the way up to management as well. Don't bring these types of guys into this locker room and to be a part of this team. And I think that's going to be a huge step towards creating change. And from my perspective as a former athlete and player, that peer pressure is the most significant way to make change from within an organization.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could talk for days and days about the overwhelmingly misogynistic world that lives within sports, literally for days. And I don't know that there will be a change anytime soon, because it feels like we have progress, and then a story will come out like Jess is talking about, where it's like, how archaic that no one even talked to a female in this scenario. But I do know that as more females enter the sports world and stick up for themselves, and leadership roles are filled by women, to Jess's point, the more that female voices are heard, the more this cycle can shift. And I know that for me, I didn't grow up playing sports like these gals did. So like the locker room atmosphere, I don't have brothers. The locker room atmosphere was really overwhelming to me when I got to sports, because I was just completely surrounded by men. And for better, for worse, men poke fun and they joke and they make slide comments. And I was not very good at handling that at first, because I was offended easily to begin with. I cried like an embarrassing amount my first year at the Jaguars, because I just like didn't know how to handle it. And I think there's a balance. And to Jess's point, like I completely feel like I'm one of the guys now, but when I was in Jacksonville, and Beth, you probably heard me tell the story before, but when I was in Jacksonville, Maurice Jones, I was an intern right out of college, and Maurice Jones-Drew was on the team, and I'm sure I cried in front of him like 4 times, and he was like, okay, we've reached the limit of you crying. And he like pulled me aside, and not in a overly masculine way, but just how he would tell any intern, like, yo, if you want people to respect you, you have to respect yourself and stick up for yourself, because that's when people don't really see you as a female so much anymore, and they just see you as an integral part of this team. And like that, I will never forget it. I tell everyone I encounter that story, because I think that Maurice is a good person in that, like, he saw that I was struggling and knew that I was going to get eaten alive one way or another, and kind of had that harsh talk with me. And Maurice is a good person because he did that. And I think, to Beth's point, like, as general managers draft and bring in good men like that, that is how the cycle can also change. Because if you're in a locker room full of scumbags, the peer pressure is going to kick in and one person piles on. But if you're bringing in and, even grooming through your programs and seminars, and you're grooming your guys to be respectful members of your team, I think it can help in that way too.
Getting the lay of the land is probably the most significant hurdle that we've had to overcome when you start on a new adventure or working in a new field or a new job, as opposed to actually preparing and calling a game. That's part of our daily life. We know how to do that. It's getting that lay of the land, feeling comfortable in uncomfortable situations that are critical. The faster you can do that, the better you'll be. And in most cases, like Erin found, I know Jess did when she went to MLB, and I have in all the places I've gone to, quite often it's a guy friend who does know the lay of the land and who is willing to help you out. So, again, find those people in your huddle.
Okay, well, before it gets too late, I want to get to our questions, because we have, as you might imagine, a number of questions. We do have a large audience, many of whom are undergraduate students here at UT. So, we'll just take a few moments to answer their questions. First question is for Jessica specifically. It comes from Jaime Morales Jr. He asks if you can speak about your experience as a Latina journalist, specifically of Mexican descent, and how your cultural and ethnic background has been instrumental in your career, and 2, the barriers you have had to face in the sports journalism field because of that background.
I feel like, especially covering baseball, even though I still do softball and have done softball, there's just not as much of a Latin presence, which when there is, it's definitely fun to get into. But in Major League Baseball, I feel like the biggest thing that I get excited about being in the room is when we talk about Latin players, is really understanding the difference. And that's something that I feel like is really lacked within baseball is we put Cubans and Venezuelans and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Mexicans all in the same category. And knowing like my family and it's from Mexico and like how different, not bad, not good, but how different that experience is from a player that is coming from Cuba or right now Venezuela. Like it is mind blowing. And so just really getting further into not just like, I'm not here just because my last name is Mendoza, but I am here because I really want people to understand, mostly in production meetings. I mean, speaking up, and sometimes it's that record screeching, like, you know, because you're saying something that's not like maybe been said before, or you're pointing out something that's difficult. And it's interesting because people sometimes are like, we just want to call a baseball game. I'm like, I get it, but Wilson Contreras was crying yesterday because his parents are digging through trash in Venezuela. Like, I mean, this is like, I get that he's a catcher and he can do all these things and we can talk about that. Guess what? We got like 4-hour baseball games now. Like they're long, so we're good. But can we please let people understand who this person is and when he's from Venezuela, what that truly means in this moment right now? So those are some of the things. I don't feel like there's a lot of barriers until you really get passionate. And then I just find like, no, I'm not taking no for an answer. Like that's what's nice about having a mic. Is I'm letting you know what I'm going to talk about. You can follow me or not, but like, this is important to me. And you didn't hire me to just be a yes person. Like I am here with my background, with my differences, with what I bring to the table, good, bad, ugly. That's why I'm here. And I want to make sure that I'm bringing forth the things that I think are important.
You're muted, Dr. Harrison.
Yeah, I got it. I'm good for one of those at least every class, every week, every Thursday. So along those lines, and this is a question for all of our panelists, what advice would you share for someone needing to balance a desire to speak out about societal issues, knowing that those sentiments may not mesh entirely with the company or brand or team or what have you that they're effectively the face of or a face of?
I will start. It's a broad question, and I do think it can be a case by case basis because I don't want to speak so broadly that everyone just goes out and gets a megaphone and says whatever they want. But I do think if you feel like the brand or the network or the team that you are the face of is going to shame you for your thoughts, then you are at the wrong brand or team or organization. I think there, of course, are opinions. And I think in today's society, we all need to work on managing the divisiveness that is in the country today. Like, let's hear each other out rather than just kill each other over things. So I think that maybe there is some kind of compromise, or let's talk through it. Let's see if we're on the same page before we just go out and tweet it or say it on the air or whatever. But to Jess's point, like, I don't think taking no for an answer when you're passionate about something is an option. And if it is a reasonable and rational opinion that you have and somebody is trying to mute you from saying that, then I think you need to reevaluate the company that you are working for.
I do feel like politics has brought in a whole like new this last year. I've seen it, and it's always been, I mean, like, and we all know like politics isn't something you really touch, although it coincides with sport like all the time and more than I think people even realize. But you know, I think social justice, I mean, there's stuff that I am passionate about clearly that I've already stated that I'm like, to Erin's point, like if you want me to not talk about like Latin players and get into that, then like don't hire me. Like, I don't know what like you thought you were getting, but this is what you're getting. But when it comes to politics, which I think we all still have our passions and our beliefs, it is complicated because it definitely is, I feel like, more disunited and hateful and just, oh my gosh, like I can post something about that's not even feels political, but then it turns political and you can just see the sides come out. And it's hard, like working for a company, you know, that you don't ever want to represent a certain thing that maybe the company doesn't want you to go as far to put out there. But it changes all the time. I mean, Beth, like, I think you steer clear pretty, you're not going to dive in, but I'll tell you what, politics, complicated, because I've got opinions, we've all got opinions, and it's hard to not want to share them when you do have an audience.
Yeah. I would agree.
So this is another question that was directed to Jessica, but I think any of the three of you can answer it. This person is a huge MLB fan and hoping to get into either the front office side or the media side at some point. What is the biggest piece of advice you can give to someone looking to get their foot in the door? And is there a way that they can use social media to accomplish that?
I mean, how disappointed would this person be if I answered this question and then we moved on? Like, Beth, Miss Chicago Cubs, and Jess, y'all take this.
Oh.
I mean, I think the biggest thing with, especially front office, which I love that question, by the way, because I already think your mind is in the right spot of just, if you're involved with sports media or just sports and journalism, and there's just so many avenues now. It's an exciting time to you don't have to have an athlete background or a certain resume. Like, you got to be good, and you just got to understand and bring something different to the table. You know, my biggest advice is more of just trying to meet, and I know this is kind of across the board for everything, but, you know, meet and really let people understand what sets you apart, because everyone wants a lot of these sports jobs. Like, it's just, especially, you know, you might be a woman, you could be, but what sets you apart? What are the things that when you're thinking about, you know, a player transaction or, you know, free agency, like, what are the things that you notice that are a little different from what is happening in the market right now? And kind of list out those things, research them, have backing, but bring something, because a good front office is going to want different. They're going to want someone that's going to come in and be like, you know what? I have this angle. If you ever looked at this, and maybe have a couple different options. And that's what I've found with front offices. And there's some bad ones out there that they want the same thing they've been doing for the last 40 years. That's not your front office. Find the ones that want something different, understand what makes you different, and just like research the heck out of that and come with that.
Yeah, when I was first getting into sportscasting, you know, first and foremost, you've got to be yourself. You want to succeed and fail doing it your way. So, you know, part of what we've talked about is to find your own voice, if you will. Also, find out what makes you unique. And in my case, I could have been an analyst, or I could have been in the studio, or I could have been a sideline reporter, you know, with 1,000 other women, or I could do this play-by-play thing where there are no other women and carve out a little niche for myself. And that's kind of how I started to get my foot in the door. And the other thing I think that's important for women, and the discussions we've had, you know, working in a man's world, it is an audio visual medium, and you will be judged to a certain degree, and by higher ups, with how you look, how you sound, and how you present yourself. So usually I like to say you need to be a little Jimmy Chitwood and a little Jimmy Choo. But since this is a Tennessee audience, I'm going to say you need to be a little Peyton Manning and a little Pat Summitt. And by that, I mean Peyton Manning or Jimmy Chitwood from Hoosiers, you got to want the ball. There aren't a lot of women that necessarily want the ball, and they want the ball in their hands at the end of the game. They want to be the ones confident making the decisions. They want to be the trailblazer. They're not afraid to go into a room full of guys and be the only woman in there. And then you also want to be a little Pat Summitt. You got to be so well prepared, and you have to look the part. You know, calm, cool, casual when she starts out the game. She can get a little fiery when she needs to be, and she gets the best out of everyone around her. That was what she did when she was coaching at Tennessee. Those are the kind of qualities I think that set you apart. And quite honestly, what we often find in our business, at times it's still very much a quota system. And quite often you're compared to the other women. And once they hire one woman, we don't need any more. We've got our fill. We are still fighting that battle. So what makes you stand out, what makes you unique are critical to you getting your foot into the door, and then also successfully doing that job well, surviving and thriving in that world?
I will add one more thing, just because it's important to me, and I've already mentioned it in Derek's class before, but as you know, Beth and Jessica are speaking like high level things that are very important, that make you stand out. And I think something that's very tangible that I think all of you guys can focus on. And after hearing how like eloquent Jess and Beth are, and all of Beth's like amazing words, and obviously they have to be smart on their feet and they can do this really well, but like being a good writer and honing your writing skills is important for any job that you have, period. And I can say that confidently now because I just changed jobs from sports to automotive e-commerce. And let me tell you, I couldn't name 3 different cars, gun to my head. So the fact that I am now the director of PR at a company that like I couldn't even identify like anything about, but I know how to write a press release. I know how to interact with media. I know how to, write emails to the company because I know how to write. And all of the professors on this call, you are very welcome for this, for the students, but like you have to be able to write well and write for different audiences, because no matter if you are on camera, behind the scenes, prepping a player, talking to a CEO, the only way that you're going to be taken seriously in sports or in the corporate world is if you can write well. And writing well helps you BS well sometimes. If you don't really know what you're talking about, it can help you if you are an eloquent writer. And the other thing that I think is really important, especially, you can tell from all 3 of us in speaking today, is that innate curiosity. And I think, working in comms, you have to ask questions, you have to anticipate questions, and you have to have that desire to know more. And, Jess and Beth spend a lot of time in production meetings getting to know these players. And I think all of us have just genuine curiosity about like, hey, tell me about your family in Venezuela. I'm not even going to talk about this on air, but tell me more so that I can be better at my job, at what I'm talking about. And, being able to talk with players and coaches or CEOs or on the corporate side with people of different backgrounds, having curiosity to understand them. That's how you build those long lasting, networking opportunities or long lasting relationships. So I think asking those questions genuinely, not just to check off a box, but to genuinely be curious about things is important.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question, Derek. Is that?
I don't know, John Dewey. What do you think?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Last question of the evening.
Drum roll.
Pressure's on.
How should a student go about leveraging their experience on campus to pursue a career in sports communication? This one was specifically aimed at Erin since she's a UT grad, but again, anyone can answer. How do you get involved while in college to gain experience that will help you stand out for job applications?
I mean, listen, y'all, my dad is a genius and told me like day one of me going to college that I needed to get involved on campus. And I've told all of you that have been on meetings with me before, but I wrote a sports column for the Daily Beacon starting when I was a freshman, which actually would be hilarious if I looked at my columns from when I was a freshman. It would be, I'm sure, an abomination. But the cool thing about writing for the Daily Beacon is when Lane Kiffin got fired or left, ESPN called me and I wrote an article for ESPN as a freshman in college from a student's perspective. And fun fact, when you Google me, it's the first thing that comes up now, which is a little embarrassing, but when you Google me, that's what comes up is Lane Kiffin is about as trustworthy as something, I forget what it was. But anyway, so I wrote for the Daily Beacon. I got involved with media relations behind the scene and I got to work 3 years with Pat Summitt, which is the highlight of my entire life. And I got to work in women's basketball and women's soccer. And I got to cover football games and basketball games and all the UT, like the same people that I worked for at UT Media Relations, a lot of them are still there. Like UT plays Vandy tomorrow. And so I messaged my old boss to see if I could go to the game. there are no fans. I didn't know that, but you know, like all those, and when I applied for my internship with the Jags, had no idea, but the PR director of the Jags ran Peyton Manning's foundation and knew all the guys behind the scenes at Tennessee. So the connection, especially at Tennessee and big powerhouse schools where sports is everything, the people who work there and who are behind the scenes and have, you know, relationships with players who have gone on to be in the NFL or general managers. My general manager at the Raiders, Reggie McKenzie, is a UT alum. I really feel like that's why he hired me, seriously, because like being in California, there's not a lot of people from the South, and you just get each other more when you're an alumni. And so use those connections. I tell all of you guys, message me, find me on LinkedIn, like let me help you find, there's something about being an alumni and working in the, I know that I'm taking this over, but I just like get really passionate about working behind the scenes at UT because it just like, I feel like it got me where I am. So please take advantage of the opportunities, and I'm happy to make introductions for you guys. But that's where like the key relationships are, is when you're in college, you're so fresh and young and you'll do anything. So, and they remember that.
I believe the title of the article was Good Riddance, Lane Kiffin.
Okay.
The mantra for sportscasting is grab them by the eyeballs. What do you do to make sure that people are watching or reading and they can't look away? The first line here, Erin: to my fellow students at the University of Tennessee and me, Lane Kiffin is about as faithful as Tiger Woods.
Heyo.
And he's out there. So,
oh man, I had so much sass. No fear.
You speak
Awesome.
you speak to the passion, I think, and when you're passionate about something or love to do something, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like extracurricular. You know, you're perfectly happy to take the 10 p.m. shift as a DJ because it'll get you on the air. It'll get you talking. You're willing to write whatever it is. You know, I'll sneak in one final Mark Twain. The two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And so for a lot of you, for me in particular, I had already found out why by the time I was in college. So do what you can, nights, weekends, over the summer in the field that you want to pursue, and get ahead, get a leg up.
Well said. I mean, that was like perfectly answered.
The one chance for an English major to get
Between Erin and Beth, like, I mean, I'm taking notes.
Well, thank you very much to our three panelists. This has been an absolutely amazing panel. It was a pleasure to be a part of. And I actually look forward to looking at the recording of this because I think that there were just so many great nuggets of info in there that students will be able to look back on and use. So again, I thank you all very much for your time. If you're watching this at home, give a round of applause to our guests. And thank you to all those in attendance, both members of the community and students who came to the panel. You all had such great questions, and I hope that myself as a moderator and the panelists provided you with some information that will serve you well going into your careers. So tomorrow, Social Media Week continues here at the University of Tennessee with day 2. And we look forward to seeing you for all of our events the rest of this week.
Thank
I
you.
hope
To
next year we're in person. I'll come see y'all in person in Knoxville.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.
It's good to see your faces too.
Yeah.